I'm Miles Martin, and I've been camping on the interior rivers of Alaska since the early 70s. So I want to talk about what that's like and share some incidents and photography with you. After a long 10-hour day of travel on the main river where there's lots of waves, I prefer to pull into a small creek like this to find a camping spot. It's common to see quite a lot of wildlife out in the wilderness. The beaver is one of the things you can count on seeing. Sometimes camping involves going to a building you've already built, and here is where I'm working on a log cabin in a remote area. I don't own the land, it's just a place I would build and camp and hunt at. Sometimes I live right on the boat, cook on the boat like I am here. This saves a lot of time. Sometimes I live in the boat but put the tent up on shore so I can sleep a little better and keep warm. I sometimes cook in a can like this, a little portable stove I built. I sometimes heat the tent from the inside with a little wood stove, especially in the fall when it's getting chilly out. So sometimes I bring my food with me. You can see I have the cooler right next to the stove, and you can see I have a spare motor hooked up to the boat, just pointing that out. Sometimes I live off the land, so here's a pike, and then sometimes I have, like, here's butterflies hanging around the fish poker. Sometimes I bring other people out to go fishing that are friends, and this little girl remembers this trip for the rest of her life. I always bring a cooking grill with me whenever I need it, so I can put the grill up, and there I am cooking a pike, and there's the smoke from the tent in the late fall. This is a tent set up underneath a tarp if it's raining. That's moose hunting, and I'm hunting using a canoe, and I've got meat wrapped up there in the rag, and I cook moose meat sometimes out in the field before I bring it home. Grind up the burger at home and make sausage, and just saying that sometimes going out camping has a purpose. I'm getting meat that's going to last the whole year. So here's a setup when I'm not just camping for the night. I've got a tarp set up over the tent in case it rains. He's staying in this spot because I'm building a little tiny shed. It's flood time and I can get in where I normally can't, so I'm hauling a bunch of supplies in. This is a little portable garden shed you can set up in a weekend. So this is the inside of what I call Pogie Camp. And I sometimes stay in a shelter on the boat. It's called a bimmy, and I adapted it so that it's bug-proof. So I set up, sometimes I never have to leave the boat at all. I cook, eat, sleep, live on the boat, and don't step up into the mosquitoes or where the bears are, depending on what the situation is. And I camp a lot of remote places. There's some mountains, some rivers. Here's a Tolovanna Roadhouse where you can go camping and pay and stay at a roadhouse where they have sled dogs and other things going on depending on what level of camping you want to do. Early in the morning, I'm out there in the wilderness, and I like to get out early and see the sunrise, and that's when I see a lot of animals, and I have a full day ahead of me to do things instead of just traveling. In the evening here, I see some gorgeous sunsets and sunrises I like to film as I'm traveling, but traveling in the dark can be a problem all by itself here. I'm moving along as fast as I can to get someplace where I can camp. So these are some logs floating down the river that you definitely don't want to run into in the dark. Normally you can predict when there's going to be logs like this during high water, but not always, and you could get into a lot of trouble running into one of these logs. You could see they're longer than the boat. So while it's very romantic and beautiful and romantic going out camping, there are dangers that can be pretty bad sometimes. You can sink the boat, be lost, need to be rescued, but on the other hand, this is some of the views I get. This is Denali from one of my camping places. And here's a lake I'm camping at with lots of fish and mountains. Here's another danger, a cliff falling. If I'd have been there, I would have died. I keep coming back to the same camp up a creek where I can go out for the day to do things. I see a lot of wildlife, and Here early in the morning, I spot a eagle and a nest up in a tree. I get some footage of that. And then, oh, sometimes I see birds and birds of prey. I don't even know what they are for sure. So I think this is a peregrine falcon, but they're rare enough I'm not quite sure, but I see it fly and I hear it. So due to the sound and behavior, I think that's a peregrine. I am pretty sure this is a golden eagle rather than an immature bald eagle because it's stouter and the wings are shorter and broader. For sure, these are swans. I run into them quite a bit. We don't see them outside Alaska much, but very common in Alaska. And look at this fireweed. Sometimes over the year it goes and goes forever, and as far as the eye can see, you've got fireweed. Spot where clear water runs into the river water, and this is where shorebirds like to hang out. So while I'm camped and eating, I get to watch this little guy run around and poke around at insects. At one point he runs right toward me, ignoring me. I thought that was pretty interesting. And here's a bird having fun taking a bath at the edge of the river, and I had to laugh at this and filmed him, and my boat and recording didn't seem to bother him very much. I see a lot of beaver houses, and I recorded the house and also all the damage, all the trees he can knock down in a season, and so they can be a somewhat destructive animal, killing a lot of trees. So in the late spring, I always see ducks everywhere I go, and they behave the same way. They paddle right out in front of the boat, wondering what I'm doing. Sometimes I see other people out. This is Jessie from Life Below Zero, exercising his dogs, letting them go into the river to cool off, and they're pulling a cart for him. Sometimes I'm camped near a glacier, and sometimes I get visited, and this is a wolverine that'll come by in the late fall and more in the wintertime. Camping along the rivers is a challenge into itself. I always like to be in a shelter. This is a little shed I built many years ago. I'm running sled dogs down the river, carrying all the supplies I need with me. I used to be a trapper. I would go out for a month, 2 months, the whole winter at a time, not seeing anybody. The world of sled dogs is a whole life all unto itself. They become your life partners and friends. So when I was younger and did more winter camping, I had 200 miles of trail I cut in 12 cabins that were resting places along the way, but a forest fire came along and burned the entire 200 miles up in all the cabins. This is a main camp, we call it. That's one of my original homesteads from back in the 80s. It burned in the forest fire, but for many years I just used it as a camping spot after I moved into town. And this is what's called a line cabin. It's only 6 by 8, and that's just to keep me out of the weather when I'm way, way remote out in the wilderness. I have a website, which is my landing page. There's a link to everything about me, my knives, my art, my books. And this is where you will find links to videos and my blogs and everything about me. This is the QR code. If you have a phone and you want to scan it, it'll go right to my site.